If you're one of the millions of first-year students going through online courses right now, I really feel for you. Going to a new school is already difficult, and doing it online just makes it that much harder. My name's Nick, and I'm a final year civil engineering student in Toronto. In hindsight, first year was definitely the hardest for me. This was mostly due to the huge transition from high school, and there are definitely things I wish I knew going into university. In this video, I'll be going over the courses I took in first year, the main concepts that stood out, and things I'd tell myself if I retook them today. Our first year was pretty general and had 10 core courses that every discipline took, with one civil specific course. We also had to take one elective course, but I'll only go through the core courses because the electives don't have that much to do with engineering. The first course on the list is Introduction to Engineering, which, just like the name suggests, this course introduced us to the world of engineering. We learned about what each discipline of engineering like civil, mechanical, electrical, etc. actually do from guest speakers. Probably the most memorable part of this course was learning about engineering disasters, the bane of every engineer's existence. Next up on the list is General Chemistry and Material Science. At first I had no idea why civil engineers had to take chemistry, but it actually has a lot to do with civil engineering. Chemistry concepts like stoichiometry, phases, and acids and bases play an important role in the materials we use for design and rehabilitation. For example, the glue of concrete is known as calcium silicate hydrate, and it's formed when you hydrate cement. You can see how it's produced from this stoichiometric equation. Chemistry actually has a lot of applications in civil engineering, so make sure to pay attention in this course. Material science built upon our chemistry course, and the most relevant things we learned were failure, phase diagrams, and crystalline structures. When I say failure, I don't mean failing a test. I mean the type of failure that occurs in materials like steel and concrete. Here's the stress-strain curve for steel. This point is called your yield strength, and this point is called your ultimate strength. These are two very important values that you'll learn in material science and use a lot as a civil engineer. One of the best things about civil engineering is how it's incredibly multidisciplinary, and you really draw on a lot of different areas, which keeps things interesting. The next couple courses are Calculus 1 and 2 and Linear Algebra. Calc 1 and 2 are pretty important courses because they taught us concepts like derivatives, differentiation, and integrals. These definitely come back to haunt you when you start learning about shear, bending moments, and structural analysis, which form the basis of structural engineering. We didn't use linear algebra as much as calc, but we did use concepts like matrices and systems of linear equations in our civil engineering systems and finite element courses. One thing to note here is that in the working world, most of the complex calculations are done with software. So it's much more important to understand these concepts rather than grind out countless hours of calculations by hand. I know a lot of people struggle with these courses because they're so focused on memorizing the steps for each problem, which is usually a habit picked up in high school. Instead, what I found to be much more effective in these courses and every other course I took was to reframe my studying to focus on understanding concepts rather than memorizing steps. Moving on, we have the two physics courses. These are my favorite first year courses because I've always been interested in physics. When it comes down to it, civil engineering is just physics with other concepts mixed in here and there. So much of what you'll do as a civil engineer will rely on a strong foundation of concepts like vectors, forces, and torque. For example, let's look at the typical frame problem we'd solve as a civil engineer. Here we have a simple frame with fixed supports and some lateral loads. Force vectors are applied which create a torque at the fixed supports. Learning these concepts well in first year will make your life so much easier as you go into the more advanced courses. The next course on our list is programming, which we really didn't touch that much for the rest of our degree, so let's move on. Moving along, we have our graphics course. This was actually a pretty fun course because we learned how to use AutoCAD, an engineer's best friend. This course was heavy on lab projects, and each lab we learned how to use different commands and draw various engineering views like floor plans, sections, and elevations. Graphics was probably one of the most important courses we took in our degree, and from personal experience, engineers use a lot of CAD. So if you want to get ahead in either school or your career as an engineer, make sure you're really comfortable with CAD software like AutoCAD and Revit. The last course on our list is Engineering Economics. Personally, I didn't take this course that seriously because I thought it would be an easy business course. But hands down, this was definitely the most difficult course in first year because the concepts were completely unrelated to what we learned. We learned a lot of different stuff like interest rates, rates of return, and inflation. If I was back in first year taking this one again, I'd definitely study a lot harder for it. First year had a huge learning curve for me, but it taught me a lot about resilience and being able to solve problems by yourself. I hope you found this video useful, and if you did, be sure to drop a like. I'd love to hear about some of your experiences in university, so please leave a comment below with some of your fears, regrets, or even advice you have for other students. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check out some of my other videos simplifying construction if you haven't already.